And without Eva, I don't think the article would have been written. Now, I want to make clear to you, and if Michael had been 100% honest with you in the introduction to me, I am not here to tell you that I'm a great guy. Michael knows so many details I hope he'll be discreet about. And I am deeply flawed. But I'm trying to figure out why there is this unbelievable interest in food and so little interest in the people who are responsible for bringing us this food. It's incredible to me. And this is part of the danger, I think, in the current food movement. There are aspects of this food movement that are incredibly narcissistic and self-absorbed. And there are aspects of this food movement that see food essentially as a status symbol, and knowing the latest restaurant as a measure of your status, and the latest food fad. And for me, what this food movement needs to be is a broader movement that is concerned about how this food is affecting us when we eat it, but also how this food is affecting the community that we live in, and also how this food is affecting the society that we're a part of. That's the food movement that I really believe in. And Alice Waters, who has really created this course, she believed in it when she created the Edible Schoolyard, which is really devoted to teaching children about this system so that they can be healthy and really contributing to this community. And as the Edible Schoolyards have traveled across the country, contributing to this country. Ultimately, I think why we don't really know much about the restaurant workers, most people don't realize there's a separate minimum wage for restaurant workers who get tips. That minimum wage is $2.13 an hour. It hasn't increased for more than 2 decades, which means that the minimum wage for tipped workers has basically declined by 60 to 65% in the last 20 years. Most people in the United States are completely unaware and seem unconcerned with the plight of the meatpacking workers who bring them their steaks and their burgers, and farm workers who are responsible for the healthiest foods that we eat. And ultimately, I have to say, my conclusion is it ultimately comes down to racism. When you look at the history of agricultural labor in this country, it's a very dark history. This country was founded on slavery, and the original agricultural laborers in this state were Native Americans, and in the eastern part of the United States, they were African American slaves. And once slavery was ended in the South, there were various forms of sharecropping and debt peonage that were practically slavery for African Americans in the American South. And in California, there's a section of the piece that I wrote about agricultural workers, and it's called The Search for a Peasantry. And in this state, once they could no longer rely on Native Americans for harvest labor, there was a turn to the Chinese and Japanese and Filipino, and eventually mainly Latino workers. So I think ultimately this problem is tied to a bigger problem of racism in American society. And I think that if these farm workers were blonde and blue-eyed or Caucasian, we would not allow this sort of daily abuse to continue. So for me, improving the lives of food workers in this country is integrally connected to seeking racial justice in this country. They're all interconnected. So that's my view on it. That's my view as an investigative reporter and as an activist on the issue. But I'm very honored tonight to have some guests who are going to come up and give you a more firsthand view of this subject. I would love to have come up, and I apologize for mispronouncing names, Maricruz Ladino, Lisel Holdenride, and Marcela Ruiz. Lisel and Marcela are attorneys with California Rural Legal Assistance, and Maricruz is a farm worker who can give a better firsthand sense than I ever could of what it is to do probably the hardest job, one of the hardest jobs in the United States, and one of the most important and one of the most disrespected.